Welcome to section 1.6. Now, we are going to be talking about multiplying and dividing integers, or in this case, real numbers. Okay. Because we're going to be talking about sign. And this time, we're going to bring in some exponents, which means you got to remember what we did in section 1.2 and that little rule. The exponent pertains to what's directly in front of it. Then we're going to do order of operations, and hopefully you have your translation sheet that I gave you in the last section printed out and ready to use. Now, the nice thing about multiply and divide is that they are very specific rules. But you got to know that you're multiplying and dividing. If two numbers have the same sign, which means positive and negative, you are having a positive answer. But if we have different signs, negative and positive, or positive and negative, we have a negative answer. So two factors that multiply together that have the same sign are positive. Two, now notice I'm talking about just two, have the same different signs, they're negative. But we're not going to get to be that easy. You gotta remember this rule also. If you have an even number of negative signs, which means you're going to have to count in this string of factors. If you have four negative signs, and that's this one, this one, this one, and this one, your answer's positive. If you have an odd number, 1, 2, 3, you're going to have a negative answer. The negative signs, if you have two of the same sign, it's positive. But when you have a lot of negative signs, you're going to have to count them. If you have an even number, your answer's positive. If you have an odd number, it's negative. Now, there's also a little catch. When 0 is a factor, you're always going to get 0 as your answer. But it's not going to be a positive, and it's not going to be a negative 0. It's just 0. Okay? Now, this is where you got to be careful. If 0 is the numerator, your answer is 0. But if 0 is the denominator, you have a word, undefined. Okay? The reason is the parts of a fraction. The bottom number says how many slices did you cut one pizza with? Well, if you don't have a pizza, you can't cut any slices. So you're saying the denominator says, I have no parts of any pizza. Well, you can't give me a slice of pizza if you don't have a pizza. Or you can't give me a slice of cake if you don't have a cake baked. Now, notice the word is undefined, not impossible. You cannot use the word impossible. Mathematically, it's undefined. 5 with the denominator of 0 is undefined. But again, 0 is the numerator. It's not a negative 0, it's just 0. And then this last line, this is something you're going to have to get used to. You have a fraction. It is showing a negative in the denominator. But you have to know that that negative b can change things, and I can move the negative to the a. And then you're going to find more often than not, the negative is sitting with the fraction bar. You want to always put it with the numerator. And we'll talk about that more when we get to chapter 3. But the negative with the bar can be moved to the top or to the bottom. Can't be in both places. The negative with the fraction bar, we normally like to move it to the top. But you'll find out why as we go further in the course. So notice when a negative is seen in front of a fraction bar, you can move the negative to the A, or if it's in the B or in the numerator, you can put it with the fraction bar. Okay? Now, multiplying. Okay, 1 negative, negative 12. Now, we have 1 negative, so we know our answer is negative, but we have fractions. 2/5 times 25 over 1. Now, if I cross cancel, I'm going to get a negative 10, because 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 1 is 1, but notice I only write the negative 10. This is 0. Now, I have 2 negative signs. My answer is a positive 108. Positive. Now remember, a number without a sign is positive. Okay, this is a negative. In this particular case, 25. Negative, negative makes my answer positive. Now, you're going to have to cross cancel. Do not get a common denominator. You're multiplying. Okay. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. 6/25. And I'm going to put a little note up here. When you multiply fractions, do not find the common denominator. Hint, common denominator is only used in addition or subtraction of fractions. So keep that in mind. Okay. Okay, now we're getting interesting here. We have this negative sign, this negative sign, this negative sign, which means I have a negative answer. Well, once I determine the sign, I can just come down here and write 5 over 1 times 1 over 6 times 24 over 1. Now, the nice part about it is this 6 and this 24, if I divide by 6, gives me 5 over 1 times 1 over 1 times 4 over 1, or a negative 20. Now, in H, I have 3 fractions. This 3 and this 3 are going to cancel. This 4 and this 4 are going to cancel. Now, all of them are positive, so it's my choice to write the positive. But remember, a number without a sign is positive. My answer is 1/5. Okay? Now, when we divide, okay, this is going to give me a negative 3. Now, I have a negative and a negative, which is a positive 16. This negative sign, you don't have to write in the answer, but you got to know it's positive. Okay. Now, okay, this is where the fun comes up. You're dividing. You've got to flip this fraction. But the fact that I have a negative and a negative, this is going to give me a positive answer. Well, once I've determined the sign, I can write 7/12, and then I flip and multiply. This 7 and this 7 cross cancel. This 6 and this 12 are going to give me 1/2, because it's 1 over 2 times 1 over 1 when I cross cancel. Now this is giving me a negative. Now, if I divide by 15, my answer is a negative 1/3. Okay. Now, this is where those lovely instructions that we talked about in section 1-2 comes into play. The exponent pertains only to what is directly in front of it. And I want you to notice how this works. We talked about repeated multiplication. So this is going to confirm our answer. This 3 is saying I'm writing 3 parentheses with -3, which means I have an odd exponent. My answer is negative, but it's 3 times 3 times 3. Now, I have an even number. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is giving me a positive 16. Now, I want to show you something. Look at the first 2 examples. This 3 is directly behind the parentheses. What's in front of the exponent is the parentheses. What's in front of the exponent is the parentheses. What's in front is the parentheses. But look at this last one. Mathematicians don't like to write ones. But this 4, what's directly in front of it? Just the 2, which means I have 4 2's and 1 -1. So my answer is a negative 16. One has parentheses, one does not. The exponent pertains only to what's directly in front of it. Now, as you see, I wrote them out in repeated multiplication. You may find that writing them out always confirms the correct answer. And let's take a look at these problems. Okay, now they're asking you to evaluate, but this is my hint. What does A represent? -3, -3, -3. Why? Because this 3 has a parentheses directly in front of it, which means what's in the parentheses is written 3 times. So my answer is a -27. Now be careful with B. This 2 is only pertaining to the 7. That negative is out in front. This is 7 times 7. But it's understood that this -1 is multiplying by 7 times 7. The 7's repeat. This negative is representing -1. Okay, the 2 is in front of the parentheses. This is going to give me a positive 144. And remember, by writing it out, I actually can determine the correct answer, whether it's positive or negative. Now, this 3 is directly in front of or behind the parentheses, which is -1/5, -1/5, -1/5, which means my answer is a -125. That's my answer. Well, here we go. Right here. -4, -4, -4, -64. Now be careful with this one. -3 times 3 times 3. This negative sign is really -1 times 3 3's, or -27. Be very careful with exponents. The exponent pertains only to what's directly in front of it. Now, here comes the fun. Order of operations. This is now going to bring in more of the exponents. But this one is also going to require that you understand the rules of exponents. And then we have the multiply and divide. Now, we're going to go through these, and hopefully you are going to get it. I hope. Okay? Okay. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Now, technically, there is no parentheses. Parentheses are grouping symbols. This -7 is a single number. We're not grouping it. But we do have an exponent right here. This means 3 times 3, which means -28 divided by -7 plus 9. That's our exponent. Now, multiply or divide is this step. 2 negatives is going to give us a positive 4 plus 7. And notice I'm finishing. I'm adding two positive numbers. Okay. Okay. We have no please and no exponents. But multiply and divide. Okay, be careful. These go first. Remember, this is an or. This will give me -7 plus -7 and then a 5 following it. Now we multiply -7 plus. Now we're going to put these two in parentheses, -35. The reason is we're combining them. And then, lo and behold, add or subtract this line, -42. Okay, we do have a parentheses right here. Or -11 minus 4. I'll make that a better 11. Maybe I gotta make it even better. Minus, okay, what's going inside this parentheses? A positive 8 plus a -15 makes this number a -7. Okay, that's our parentheses. Now, we don't have any exponents, but multiply is what comes next. These two go together. This is -44. Now, this is where you've got to be careful. These two are also multiply. You have two negative signs, one in front of the 4, one in front of the 7. The signs are going with the numbers, which means this is a positive 28. You are multiplying twice. This negative times negative makes the positive. And then I add or subtract, which is going to give me a -16. Be careful here, okay? 4 and negative 7 are back to back. We have a parentheses. I know this may seem strange, but I'm going to write this a little differently for you. This line is saying 4 negative here plus a negative 4 times a negative 7. Okay? That's why this gives me 28. This sign is understood, that plus sign. Now, if you wish to write it as I did in black, be my guest. But remember, a negative number next to a parentheses is meaning multiply. That's why negative 4 and negative 7 are in this bracket that I wrote in black. And then here we go. Okay. We have no parentheses and we have no exponents. So those are gone. But multiply. These two are going first. This is the multiply. So I have negative 2/7, 14 sixths. Okay, I'm going to cross cancel. And notice I have one negative sign. So technically, once I write that negative sign over here, I really don't have to, on the side, keep my negative signs, but I got to remember it's still there. When I cross cancel, divide by 2, 1, 3. Divide by 7. Multiply these two together. I get 2/3 plus 1/6. This line needs common denominators. Because we're adding and subtracting. I have a negative plus a positive times 2 times 2. This will give me a negative. Now I'm getting 3 sixes. But don't forget, I gotta reduce. That's a negative. So my answer, and I'm going to erase this to give me a better place. This will give me a negative 1/2. Reduce. Huh? Now, we're back to the translation sheet. Okay. I'm highlighting these 3 because you got to be careful with those. Because here we go. And these are going to bring the 2 operations back to back in a couple of the problems we have. Okay, right here. The quotient. Okay, quotient means fraction. See where this and is? The and represents the fraction bar. What's in front of the word and what's behind the word and creates a fraction. Now remember, as we talked about, this negative is with the denominator. When I simplify it, I put the negative with the reduced fraction of 3 over 1, or just negative 3. Okay? Okay, now this is where you got to watch. See this word, the? Twice means 2. The is the parentheses. And a difference. See that word and? 16 minus a negative 42. You got to be careful. The word difference happens to indicate this minus sign, which means I have 2. Now, sometimes they like to use brackets. 16 plus 42 instead of parentheses. But this means group. So I'm going to do these two first. 2. 16 plus 42 is 58. When I multiply, I'll get 116. Okay? Now, here we go again, but be careful. This has got the word and. The product of and. Well, that means we have 8, but the sum is what's going inside. See that nice little word? The product of 11 and negative 2. Now, sometimes they like to write it with brackets. Because we're doing this first, negative 8 in front of the brackets, and this is a positive 9. 1 negative, negative 72. And my last slide, half of the sum. Half of the sum of 9 and negative 3. Notice that little word of means multiply, but then I have the. The is the grouping symbols, which we're going to do first. 1/2. Now this is a positive 6 over 1. When I cross cancel, I'm going to get the number 3. Okay. Well, this ends section 1-6. Yay! I can tell you're all excited. So I'm saying bye-bye. Enjoy.